Thanks for tuning in to this week of the Connor Grohl Sports Podcast. I'm back with Michael Lyon again, and we're talking a lot of things going on in the NFL this week, including the Mahomes Injury, Jalen Ramsey trade, Marcus Mariota's benching, and the referee controversy from Monday Night Football. Hope you enjoy it. It's a fun show, and let's get straight into it. All right, thanks for joining me again, Michael. We saw the Chiefs play the Broncos last night, an easy win for the Chiefs. But obviously the big story coming out of the game, and the big story kind of with the NFL moving forward after that 32-6 victory. Pat Mahomes gets injured on a quarterback sneak, I believe in the second quarter, and looks like he's gonna miss multiple weeks.
Hey Connor, happy to be back. Pretty scary for the Chiefs, for the NFL as a whole. People are talking about Patrick Mahomes as if he's already the greatest player of all time and putting up numbers, and the pace, through 3 games, his pace was to get 60 touchdowns, 1,000,000 yards. And now, MRI results come back today, but he might miss the rest of the year, which is scary.
It's a worst case scenario. I do think that's an accurate number, by the way, when you say he was on pace for 1,000,000 yards. He was literally on pace to shatter records. He's dislocated patella. I think it's a dumb play call. He's had ankle injuries that have briefly taken him out of the last couple Chiefs games. And so it's a 4th and goal situation, and what do you want to do? You want to sneak your quarterback that's already had ankle injuries. That's already rolling the dice in a big way. And then, obviously, another injury completely separate from that with the dislocated patella. So he's going to miss, we're still waiting for the results of that MRI, like you said, but the initial thought is he might be missing 3 weeks. If I'm the Chiefs, I'd probably just hold him out 4 weeks, assuming there's not a difference in his condition shown by the MRI, a significant difference. Because after 4 weeks, they get their bye, and then hopefully they get him back for the start of December against the Raiders. But obviously, this is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, and they don't want to be without Mahomes for this long, but they're kind of going to have to.
Right, they really don't. All of a sudden, it'll be week 13 by the time he's back. Yeah. And remember, this is a Chiefs team that, before beating the Broncos last night, had lost back-to-back games. How do you feel once Mahomes comes back? He'd thrown only 1 touchdown in 2 games.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So do you feel like they're still Super Bowl? Because they were considered elite, probably right up there with New England.
Yeah, they were about tied in the odds preseason.
When Mahomes comes back, you think they'll reclaim that spot, or these struggles are...
No, I don't. Well, the thing is, I don't think they even have the spot with a healthy Mahomes right now, right? I think their defense has shown that they're, too weak. And they had a good game against the Broncos. That's not saying a ton, but they entered this week something like the 26th or 27th overall defense, despite having the number 3 overall offense and number 1 passing offense. So obviously the defense has been a big liability for this team for the whole season. I think they'll still be very competitive. I think they're still going to be one of the best teams in the AFC when Mahomes gets back. The question is really how far are they going to fall in the meantime? Next 2 couple games, they are at home, which should give them a little bit of help, but they got the Packers and the Vikings, 2 really strong teams. I don't think Matt Moore is going to be winning the MVP and Pat Mahomes' replacement. After that, they get the Titans and the Chargers, which are a couple more winnable games. But if you want to say even if they go 2-2, which looks like an optimistic scenario, that puts them at 7-4, which in itself could still be fighting for a playoff spot. We think they'll be fine just because of their division. But even at 6-5, they could even be competing with the Chargers could get it together, the Raiders could continue playing well. They could still be fighting for the division, but kind of regardless, I think they'll probably be. They won't have a first round bye, right? Which hurts them a lot.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about them missing the playoffs just because their division's so weak. San Diego's maybe would have been thought their best challenge, but they're playing horrible this year.
Right.
Whatever their problem is. Kansas City, I think they'll make the playoffs without much issue, but in terms of being a championship contender. I think their stock takes quite a bit of hit after this injury news, especially considering both their schedule and their performance leading up to the injury.
Well, right, and yeah, that's the thing with the Chiefs. They were supposed to be a Super Bowl contender, and now just the fact that they're going to have to play one more game to get through the playoffs most likely will hurt them. The fact that Pat Mahomes, could, he might be back, but we're not going to know just exactly how healthy his ankle or his knee is. So there could be lingering questions there, and just how dominant New England has looked throughout the first 6 weeks of the season. There is, almost nothing that is going to convince me that anybody could be favored over the Patriots. The Patriots might find themselves with another crack at 16-0 this year, as crazy as it sounds.
It's hard to find odds-on favorites in the NFL to even win their conference and go to the Super Bowl, but I think that's what we see in New England. Their defense is insanely good. Can you give that stat again about their defense fantasy points compared to quarterbacks?
Yeah, so their defense, we were talking a little about this before the show, and I'm highly aware of this statistic because I happen to have the Patriots defense. It was like a 14th round pick or something that turned into the greatest move of my draft. But the Patriots are the overall, I believe it's either number 13 or number 14 overall in fantasy scoring, which puts them ahead of most starting quarterbacks in the league, and in theory would put them at probably a second round. Technically, if you want to wait on quarterbacks, maybe even a late first round draft choice, which is absolutely ludicrous. But they've had, I want to say, 4 defensive touchdowns, defense and special teams included. They've been shutting out all kinds of teams, and they haven't allowed more than 14 points in a game this season. But even in those games, they allowed 14 to the Jets, but they had, I believe, a fumble recovery touchdown there, and then they gave up 14 to the Giants, but they forced 4 turnovers from the Giants. So they're just unstoppable, basically.
Yeah, crazy good. I don't know. They're probably the best defense in the league. And you're talking about fantasy points in terms of value. I mean, to compare that to the other defenses and what they're scoring, they make an argument for first overall.
It's just on a position basis, comparing them to, because we know, I think Mahomes is probably, I don't know if he's number 1, but probably in the top 5. And you expect to see some of the quarterbacks there, but when you see a defense, they're so much higher, they're so far above what you would expect from an average defense. I'm just looking at my team right now, and through 6 weeks they've gone above 10 points every week, which is kind of like the bench line for a really good a good defensive week is 10 plus. They've gone above 10 every week. They've had a 40 bomb against the Dolphins. Another 29 points against the Bills, 30 against the Giants. Just for me, in these 6 weeks, as we test my rapid addition, but they have 141 points, which is going to average you 23, 24 points a week.
That's insane.
This is a top caliber quarterback, and it's your defense.
It's really insane.
Yeah, so obviously the Patriots looking in great shape, and now with the Chiefs off kilter, and they're struggling a little bit, and they're going to be without Mahomes for a month. Can you think of any team that could even possibly, it feels like, compete with the Patriots at this point? I mean, who's even the second best team in the AFC? Is it just the Bills?
If you look at the standings, I think it's the Bills.
You think realistically, maybe the Texans?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about making Super Bowl prediction bets with some of my friends, and I mean, obviously I want the Patriots. They seem to be a solid tier, if not 2 tiers above the next best team. And I was who else could even be their respectable opposition? The Texans was the first thought that came to my head, outside the Chiefs. Maybe if Deshaun Watson keeps growing throughout this year, their defense plays really well. Maybe they could win again, but no, they're not even in the same tier. The Colts are looking okay, but none of these teams are serious
Yeah, if you're not going to
competition.
bet on these teams to be the Patriots, right? Like the Ravens, they kind of died down a little bit after the first couple weeks. And Lamar Jackson had his incredible game where he rushed for over 150 yards and either over 150 or 200 passing yards. He was like the first quarterback in NFL history to do that. But even with that, they're still playing in close games, win or lose, and the Bills and the Texans seem like the closest ones to me. But again, like, who wants to bet on either of these teams? And I think Deshaun Watson has the capabilities and that strong Texans defense that they're probably the number one. I think just because I don't trust Josh Allen or whoever the Bills are going to throw at quarterback by the end of the season to be able to really do much against the Patriots defense. And I think the Texans are one of the only teams in the league that has a shot to really explode because we've seen inconsistencies from them. But with inconsistencies, that means we've also seen them go for 40, 50 plus points. Mm-hmm. Not just this year, but last year too. And they seem really the team most offensively capable of doing anything to the Patriots, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Texans and Chiefs, I would say, have the highest ceiling outside of the Patriots. But like, other than that, it's just hard to take seriously that, like, yeah, Buffalo has a good defense, but the Patriots defense is even better, and the Bills offense doesn't even compare to even the old Tom Brady. So it seems like a joke of a comparison, trying to compare other AFC teams. I think the AFC is weak.
It's really weak, is what we've kind of learned this season.
There's a real conference imbalance.
What happened to the AFC?
The Steelers are gone.
We look at the divisions, and literally there might be one good team in the AFC is the conclusion we're reaching. I think I'm willing to give the Texans to say they're a good team now. Especially they lost games to the Saints and the Panthers, and we were like, these are not... I mean, they lost to the Saints, which is not a bad loss, and they lost to the Panthers, which was maybe at the time kind of a worse loss. But now looking back, both of those teams have won 4 games in a row, right? And with backup quarterbacks. Right. Teddy Bridgewater, Kyle Allen, they're still both 4-0.
Kyle Allen might be an upgrade, by the way.
Yeah, by the way, I don't think Cam Newton's starting another game for the Panthers. Would you agree with
that?
No,
I completely agree with that. Not until Kyle Allen starts losing. It looks like they'd be stupid.
Maybe if they have a big losing streak, they make some kind of a change. But how do you have a guy, Newton started the year 0-2, injury concerns, and then he actually got injured, right? He, going back to last season, had lost like 6 consecutive starts, and now a new guy comes in and he's 4-0. He's not gonna
McCaffrey's firing on all cylinders too.
Yeah. When one guy's batting 0 and one guy's batting 1,000, you don't make the change.
Right, especially because they've had concerns about Cam Newton for the last couple of years. Probably it's like he hasn't really looked the same ever since. Some combination or accumulation of injuries. He runs a lot, obviously. And he hasn't been an MVP for him since, I don't know, they made the Super Bowl.
Since he won the MVP.
Since he won the MVP.
I don't think he ever really came back from that.
So Kyle Allen looks good. Yeah,
and Bridgewater, I mean, I feel really good for him that he's getting another chance. And he's one where I think, Drew Brees is still going to be the starter whenever Drew Brees comes back. Because he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. But you can't convince me that Teddy Bridgewater won't be starting somewhere next season.
You can get a contract now. I don't know. Probably a much better contract than you would get otherwise.
Sure. So, I feel good for him coming back from the injuries. And it was, I had my concerns about him for sure. And it was, was he ever going to get his chance? But, he got the chance. Making the most of it. Can't do it much more than 4-0.
Right.
So... the Texans, this was the whole point to say that the Texans' losses actually look good now, right? And some of their wins, they beat the Chiefs with a mostly healthy Mahomes, looking good again this week. Or that was last week. The previous week they dropped 54 points on the Falcons or something. But anyway, it looks like, basically they're trending upwards. They look really good at the moment. But still, if they're the second best team in the AFC is not good. Right, because if you look at the other divisions, again, the Ravens are leading the North, and the Steelers and the Browns are both 2-4, and I think the Ravens are 4-2. But still, the Ravens not a particularly strong team. I feel like, and then if you want to go to the Chiefs division, without the Chiefs, I mean, it's the Raiders, right? It's like, how is the next man up in this division the Raiders?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like over the past few years, whenever we talk about conference imbalance in pro sports, it's all been about the West being better than the East in the NBA. And right now, I feel like the NFC, like take out the Patriots, the NFC has a very dominant lead over the AFC, and they might still lose the Super Bowl because the Patriots are that good.
Yeah,
but there's still a conference imbalance. It's almost like if the trade the Warriors for the last year's NBA trade the Warriors for both the Bucks and the Sixers.
Yeah,
that's almost what it looks like.
That's a good comparison. That's what it feels like. And I feel like for a while, my thought has been that the conferences were kind of balanced out by the fact that the NFC was always deeper, but the AFC always had usually 2 or 3 at least top contenders, real top contenders. And we were kind of seeing that again with the Chiefs. But really, the Patriots are the only team that I feel like is... I mean, of course, the Chiefs are a genuine Super Bowl contender just because they have Mahomes, right? But you go... At one point, my power rankings featured this was maybe week 3 or 4, but my power rankings had Patriots at 1, Chiefs at 2, and no other AFC team was in the top 10, right? And my next highest was it was either the Ravens or the Chargers, but it was 11.
Right.
And now the Chiefs are even borderline top 10, right? If you're just going to do it now. And the Texans have bounced into the top 10, and maybe the Bills as well. But I think the point's kind of made, right? And if you go to the NFC, it's so much deeper. You have...
It's wide open.
It's wide open, by the way. We thought, the Rams were going to be the front runner. And all of a sudden, they look like a mess. And the Cowboys looked like they were going to be a front runner, and now they look like a mess. But we have so many teams stepping up. The 49ers are still undefeated, right? We have the Panthers winning 4 in a row. Teddy Bridgewater's still rolling with the Saints. The whole NFC North are the Lions 500 now?
Yeah, 2-2-1.
Yeah, but that whole division is so good.
And we'll talk about why they're 2-2-1, I think, a little bit later. But yeah, they played the Chiefs really tight as well. Those 2 losses are tight losses against top tier teams. So the entire NFC North is minimum playoff contenders. Absolutely. And then the top, you got the Saints, who people think maybe could have won back-to-back Super Bowls at this point. The Vikings, who beat the Saints in one of those playoffs endings. Seattle's 5-1. Green Bay's 5-1.
And don't count out the the Cowboys and the Eagles.
Right.
The Eagles, just won a Super Bowl a year and a half ago.
Right.
And the Cowboys, a couple weeks ago, we would have said they might be the hottest team in the league. So.
You almost said don't count out the Giants. I think they're one of the 4 teams you actually can count out.
Thanks. A Freudian slip. But no, even in a hypothetical situation, the Giants still have one of the 10 best players in the league, right?
You're right, Saquon Barkley.
And it's a division that looks winnable. So I'm not going to say the Giants are a good Super Bowl contender, but look at the AFC East standings. You have between the top 2 and the bottom 2, there's literally a 4-game gap. It's ridiculous, right?
Right.
Where in the NFC, I think the Redskins, I'm thinking rapidly, and maybe the Falcons, but the Falcons still have so much potential on offense. The Redskins are the only team that I think just aren't competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you go to the AFC, the Dolphins don't look competitive. The Jets, maybe, we'll see now. But they don't look, great. The Broncos look terrible. The Titans look terrible. I mean, there's a lot of teams that look terrible.
I agree. To be fair, also, the Giants are only 1 game out of the division lead, so it's not Daniel Jones, I think, probably looked better in his first comeback win than he has ever since.
I'm willing to admit that for sure.
But, there's still some hope around him. And only 1 game out, who knows?
Yeah, and they play the Cardinals this week, and then all of a sudden, the Cardinals were 0-3-1. If the Cardinals win that game, they're 500, right? And it's all of a sudden, you have to consider them. And the NFC is really good, right?
Yeah.
But the Rams, obviously, were the favorites coming in. They have struggled a lot during the last few weeks, especially. You were telling me Goff had 79 yards passing a week ago.
Yeah, I think it was 74 yards passing.
So 79 was overstated. Yeah, they kind of look like a mess. They're down to Darrell Henderson. It looks like maybe at running back. Gurley's still injured. Malcolm Brown was not in practice Wednesday. I'm not sure if he practiced yesterday, but they're trying to change. They're going to try to turn it around, and they've done so in a big way with a really big trade, a trade that we were expecting, and we were wondering when it was going to happen and who he was going to go to for a long time. But Jalen Ramsey moves from the Jaguars, who he obviously did not want to be with, and he goes to the Rams. And on paper, the Rams, it feels like far and away just have the best roster in the league. It feels like they're stacked at every position, right? Whereas the Patriots, they're getting it done with some guys that you've still never heard of. But the Rams, literally their roster, top to bottom, is like all pros. And they're 3-3. But now they've got another all pro, and it looks like a really big move.
Yeah, a huge move for them. Their defense should be so good, but they just a couple weeks ago they gave up 55 points to the Buccaneers, and Jared Goff threw for 78 yards, not 74, excuse me.
Well,
but point stands, point stands, and Jalen Ramsey going to LA, I feel great for him. He's obviously overjoyed with the move, jumping from a situation he hated to being what should be a Super Bowl contender, although it's a little bit wishy now. Yeah. I think it's great for the Rams, but their defense, they might get a little bit better, but it's already star-studded. Their offense is where their problems are right now. I don't think, even if they correct their struggles right now, I don't think it's going to be because of Jalen Ramsey. I think their offense has to be better, and like a lot better. Last year, around this time, Jared Goff was an emerging MVP candidate, and now he's throwing a couple weeks ago he threw like 60 passes in a game, or he's just not delivering results. They're giving him plenty of volume. He's in a loaded offense with what should be a good scheme. I don't think they need to run the ball better to start.
He's turning it over a lot.
I think Todd Gurley really, really needs to get going, because it's kind of his struggles, ever since he stopped being like an elite running back or putting up elite running back numbers. It might have exposed Jared Goff a little bit as being a little bit dependent on that Rams system. And now that he can't produce on his own, their running game's really struggling. They have talented receivers, but they can't. They're not really making it work.
I mean, that's the thing. They've got talent everywhere. Like I said, it's just you can go through every position. It's like great player, great player, great player. I think you make a good point about Jared Goff kind of getting exposed. Todd Gurley was one of the best running backs in the league for years. Somewhere late in last year's regular season, he started to get hurt. And, even in the Super Bowl, he wasn't even like their primary back, right? So it was CJ Anderson. It was CJ. By the way, I believe
he's in Detroit now.
Good for him.
By the way, he's not even starting for us. But
yeah, that's what I was
going
to say. It's just like he's not even a starter. Like whatever. But yeah. And CJ Anderson was amazing in the playoffs.
He was.
It was pretty crazy. It's like,
big runs for the big fella.
Where is this coming from? But, yeah, so Jared Goff, he signed the biggest deal in NFL history over the offseason, just casually, right? Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden it's like... And I think there was a lot of people that had doubts about Jared Goff. And I was, for the most part, just like, have you seen their offense last year? They put up like 38 points a game. Like, what are you talking about? But now the running game starts to struggle and people start to get hurt, and maybe they get it in their heads a little bit that they're, the favorites, and things are maybe starting to fall apart a little bit. And I think this is incredible. I've read a lot about this, and it's a great trade for all three parties involved, right? The Jaguars get multiple first-round picks. Jalen Ramsey gets out, and he goes to a, in theory, contender, and the Rams get one of the best corners in the league, right?
Yeah, it seems like a huge haul, by the way, because multiple first-round picks in a trade is something you usually see in the NBA, not the NFL.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Yeah, like
Antonio Brown.
You could get Antonio Brown for like a 4th round pick or whatever it was, 3rd round pick.
That was before all the drama and accusations. I mean, obviously the Pittsburgh drama, but he was like the best receiver in the league, going for like a 3rd and a 5th round pick.
Yeah.
Was it? You think that's too big a price to pay, or?
I think the Rams know that this is the window.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, they'll have Jared Goff, but Jared Goff isn't the best player on this team. I think they have all their other pieces. I think this is kind of a good period for them. They were in the Super Bowl last year. This next couple of years, they need to try to, kind of throw the kitchen sink at trying to win the Super Bowl. So I think in a vacuum, maybe they're overpaying for him, but I think this is pretty solid. I think they're just taking their shot, and I think it works out well for everybody. And I think the onus, and the defense is going to get better. But they've still been inconsistent, so I'm not really sure what's going on exactly. But I think at some point the offense is going to need to get better, and a lot of it's going to go on Jared Goff.
Yeah, it's going to go on. I want to know what you think about how Sean McVay looks right now. Is he still a kid genius?
A little frazzled?
I kind of think it's not time to hit the panic button yet. He's had multiple years of success, and this is a couple games of struggle. So right. I don't want to insinuate that he should be hitting the panic button, but this is also a really bad look for him. So maybe teams have been able to figure it out a little bit more by now.
I think so.
Because Todd Gurley has been an elite running back, but. It's not like they're deep at running back behind him, and he's playing this year. Even if he doesn't, it's hard to pin all of their struggles on that. You would think that the same system would be able to fill in an approximation to Todd Gurley and get, comparable results. They're not getting comparable results to their Super Bowl quality offense.
No, I think they've definitely gotten a little predictable, and there's been a lot of situations where. I think there's been fair criticism of McVay's play calling, especially in some kind of 3rd down big situations. I can tell you one thing: there's probably 29 teams in the NFL that would trade their coach for Sean McVay right now. Right? I think he's still, a great coach. His career record, by the way, is 29-11. It's showing me. So that's good. That's very good.
If he holds that percentage, so he's not going to have any problems. But I don't know. A little bit of a red flag. I think something to keep your eye on. If
for sure.
If the Rams struggle this year, he's going to look real bad.
And the thing is, we wouldn't care about this if they weren't playing in then maybe one of the 2 best divisions in football. It's either that or the NFC North, right? They've still got. They're in a really rough spot. Actually in their division, right? They have the undefeated 5-0 Niners. They have the 5-1 Seahawks. They're 3-3. They're 2 games back, and really, they've lost to both those teams, right? They've lost to the Seahawks and they've lost to the Niners. So maybe they're better than we think, and they've just run into a buzzsaw, which is very possible. It definitely contributes at least in some part, but they're in a situation where. They're, especially with how good the NFC North is, they're going to need to be at least 2nd place in that division to make the playoffs.
Right.
And they're 2 games out. So they're in real, this is week 7, but maybe not full panic mode, but I think you got to start, trying to find your spots.
They're sweating.
You got to be sweating.
They definitely are.
You got to be sweating.
Even if what you said is true, let's say they're even the same Rams they were last year, and they've just gotten really unlucky. They've still
got a lot of ground to make up.
Yeah, and that's hard. There's so little room for error. I almost feel like they have to go. They have 1 or 2 more games they could lose for the rest of the year.
Basically.
Because the tiebreakers don't look great in their division. The NFC North might want to claim on both the wild card spots in that division.
Yeah, it's possible, right? So maybe we wouldn't be having the same conversations if the Rams were playing in the AFC North or the NFC East. But they are at a point where they have to get things going relatively immediately if they want to make the playoffs. So it's a big story to watch.
Right. Yeah.
And the Cowboys, again, the Cowboys are facing a lot of the similar troubles. I don't think we thought they were going to be nearly as good as the Rams at the beginning of the season, but certainly over the first couple weeks established themselves as a contender. And maybe that was kind of their early season strength of schedule playing in, because they got some cupcakes early on, but now they lost to the Jets, third loss in a row. And I think the reason we're not as panic button-y about the Cowboys is just because they're still tied for first in the division. But a team similarly that needs to get it together.
Right. Not going to lie, the Stephen A. Smith in me is loving the Cowboys' struggles right now.
Stephen A. Smith is loving
it. It is so funny. I love how they beat up on 3 cupcake teams the first 3 weeks. At the time, they were each arguably the worst teams in the NFL. Yeah. They played the Giants, the Redskins, and the Dolphins. And
the Giants with Eli, which is probably one of the worst teams in the league. And even now, they're better than maybe a quarter of the teams in the league.
Right. And now, after 2 okay-ish whatever losses to quality teams, now they lose to the Jets, and without a late effort comeback attempt. It was almost a blowout.
Yeah, it was a blowout for a while
against Sam Darnold and the Jets.
Are we high on Sam Darnold now? Is this the Cowboys are great and Sam Darnold is just amazing?
It's funny to evaluate teams like that in the NFL, because you'll see 1 week of results and it's are they actually good? And you're trying to just compare everybody to everybody else.
And we do this all season. It's
besides the fun in it.
Yeah, there's so much week-to-week volatility.
But I think it's most likely at this point that the Cowboys were pretty heavily overrated the first 3 weeks, and they've fallen back to reality. Probably a better team than the Jets, to be fair, but maybe slow down on the Super Bowl contender status. Maybe they're going to be a team that's just trying to make the playoffs at a maybe a little bit over 500 record.
Can I ask you a question?
No. Yeah, you can.
Do you think Dak Prescott is worth $40 million this season?
Sitting here right now, coming off a loss to the 1-4 Jets.
Just curious. He thinks he's worth $40 million.
I'm gonna go with no. I don't even think he's worth the $30 million that they offered him. To be honest,
honestly, I didn't.
I know the quarterback market's interesting because everybody's trying to reset it, and I feel like everybody who can make a legitimate claim to being a starting quarterback is asking to be the highest paid player in the NFL, and guys that get under resetting the market. If you just look at what other quarterbacks are actually paid right now, I feel like Prescott's worth the 20 to 25 million, and I understand paying him maybe a little bit more than that just to keep him away from other teams and respect that he's been your starter and has delivered a relative amount of success, which is fine, but nowhere near 40. My God.
I think the 20 to 25 mark is realistically, I think, where we're at. I think just because the salary cap increases over time, so it's every good quarterback is going to sign a massive deal at the time, and then if Prescott signs for $35 million, it's almost even normal now. We've seen Goff do it and Russell Wilson do it. But and by the time that contract's up, we're gonna be wow, it's a steal, $35 million for Dak Prescott, and we think that's funny now, but it's legit, right?
It's a fair point.
5 years from now, we could be looking at Dak Prescott, even if he's as good as he is now, and we're yeah, solid.
It's a fair point, but if he's gonna be a steal at $35 million in however many years, what's Russell Wilson gonna look like on his contract?
He just signed his for
stupid good.
37, 30. I think Pat Mahomes might just buy the state of Missouri.
He's got a big payday coming. His injury doesn't matter either. Not for this,
No, I think they literally. I don't know what else they could give him. Probably already has keys to the city. Spot in Congress. I don't know what he would want, but they'd find a way.
His own ketchup brand should be coming out.
There you go. He needs his ketchup brand.
I'd buy it.
He's already got the State Farm lucrative commercial deal.
Yeah, you're threatening Aaron Rodgers as the State Farm rep now.
I don't know.
He's just rolling in success. Good for him. I'm excited to see his contract though, because that one will be interesting. I'm not as familiar with.
It's not capped.
No.
So he can.
So he can make whatever they could willingly give him however they can make their math work.
I don't think they're spending too many pennies on Mecole Hardman.
I think you could fill in a lot of people in Mecole Hardman's spot, and he would look pretty good. Yeah. I'm surprised Sammy Watkins hasn't been able to look as good after his
He has a 200-yard, 3 touchdowns or something like that week to start.
Yeah, I think he's 100-something yards and 3 touchdowns. Close to 200 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, it was nuts.
And, their offense is obviously still great.
So, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, a couple high-quality quarterbacks struggling. How about another guy that's struggling a lot to the point where he's gotten benched? Marcus Mariota in Tennessee. I don't even know really what to say. It's just he's just been so disappointing, and him and Jameis also. Because anytime it feels like since they went 1-2 together in 2015, it feels like anytime you mention one of them, you have to mention the other one. And so in the last week, we saw Jameis Winston throw 5 interceptions in London. Still nearly 500 yards, but 5 interceptions and throw the game away in London. And Marcus Mariota gets benched by Ryan Tannehill. So at one point, these guys were going to be the future of the league, and now I don't think Marcus Mariota. I think Marcus Mariota is going to find a difficult time starting again in this league. And personally, I don't think Jameis Winston is going to be worth anything near what he's going to command in the market. So maybe the Bucs pay him, maybe they don't. But I think both of these guys are just, not even in the top half. I mean, they're just clearly struggling.
To me, they look like below average quarterbacks who have been held on to too long because of their supposed potential because they were top picks in the draft.
Right.
I saw this funny thing comparing them. It said Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota are the NFL equivalent of Andrew Wiggins and Jabari Parker.
I like it.
They
might even be the same draft.
I didn't check the year of the draft.
I think they are the same.
It could be the same.
I think they're all 15 guys. I really do.
Which is really funny. If only we knew now, we could just not watch any rookies in 2015.
Yeah, right?
Marcus Mariota looks. I mean, he's not panned out to turn into anything. Tennessee over the last few years has kind of looked like that team that somehow can get to 9-7 and lose in the first round, which
pretty consistent. Actually.
Pretty consistent in doing that. Hats off to losing in the first round, but I don't think Tennessee wants to do that forever. And Marcus Mariota does not look like he's capable of delivering a championship. And Jameis Winston is just he's a turnover machine.
Well, he's probably the number 1 turnover machine in the league. He's never had the discipline and still so many conduct concerns. And at some point, I think you just move on, right? Because if you don't have, or like a quarterback on a rookie deal, if you get a good one, is so valuable in this league, right? Because you can get a guy for $5 million a year, and then all of a sudden, a few years later, he's going to command 30 plus. And I think Jameis Winston is going to want something like $30 million a year, and I think they might pay him, they might not. It just depends on how long they want to string him along. But he's not going to be worth it, and I don't think you can have a high level of success. He's one of those guys with a high individual game ceiling, but also a very, very low floor.
Yeah. The turnovers make the floor unbearably low.
Yeah, honestly. Threw 2 pick sixes in their first week of the season against the Niners. He's thrown 5 interceptions last week, and this is just something that has kind of just gone on for his entire career. Mariota is interesting. He's not been able to really throw the ball down the field. His yards per attempt is really low. His touchdowns, his rating, his everything is really low. Certainly we think that there's some nagging injuries, but before the season started, they brought in Ryan Tannehill from Miami on, I think it's a 1-year, $8 million-ish deal. And I thought to myself, $8 million is kind of a lot to be paying for a backup quarterback. And people said, oh, yes, we brought in Tannehill, but make no mistake, right? Marcus Mariota is our guy, and we intend to play him 16 games and whatever. But
you think they had an idea?
Yes. This is what I'm coming to. I think you're not going to pay a guy that much money right? Like twice the NFL's average salary to be a backup. If you don't have a sneaky suspicion that like maybe we're going to move on from Mariota at some point during the season. And I mean, their offense has just been a mess, right? They got blanked by Denver. They had the first week of the season where they threw like 40 on Cleveland.
Yeah. And we're like, wow, Cleveland sucks.
I mean, Cleveland still might, right?
Right.
They still got all their hosts of their own problems, but like, yeah, since then they've been awful, right? The Titans are 2-4 now, and it's. I think it's right. I think they had both of them. I think they were pretty good. Probably maybe their second year in the league. I think they both probably peaked. Without the stats in front of me, but then ever since then, it's been this long game of like, are they good enough to keep them? Like,
you feel bad for Mariota. I feel bad for Mariota because it's not. He hasn't done anything wrong. It's not like he started playing bad and that's why. I mean, they're just ultimately deciding that his level of play isn't up to like the quality of where they want to be long term.
Because it isn't.
And it's not, and that's fair. It's hurtful to Mariota. It's a little bit sad to see for him, especially with like Ryan Tannehill almost looks like more of the same. Like there's no way he was okay in Miami.
Tannehill was not a similar type of quarterback, but I think similar results.
Right. So in Miami, they squeaked into the playoffs one year with him.
Yeah, they did.
But it's not like they were ever contenders.
He had plenty of very average years. And he was a guy for about 5 years. They were like waiting for the Tannehill breakout year. And it never really happened. So yeah, kind of similar in those respects. But yeah, it's weird. Like, the Jaguars are starting a guy that got drafted in the 6th round. He's a 6th round rookie. And just to throw it out there, and hate comes my way, but I don't think Gardner Minshew is that great. But still, like, Mariota's worse than that guy, right? The guy that was just like, oh, let's throw in Gardner Minshew week 1 and see what happens, right? And Mariota, and he's struggled a lot.
Right, yeah. So we'll see what happens in Tennessee.
We'll see what happens. I mean, they could do a thing like Miami where it's like, we're starting Josh Rosen, but now we're starting Fitzpatrick. But now we're starting Josh Rosen. And we're going to make him our starter for the whole season. Has one poor performance. We're starting Fitzpatrick now. And I feel really bad for Josh Rosen, but I don't necessarily want to talk about Josh Rosen.
Right.
I want to talk, one of the biggest stories from last week's Monday night game. And it kind of is unfortunate that we have to wait to record the podcast later on in the week. But just coming out of that game, it was a humongous controversy with the couple hands to the face penalties that killed the Lions late in that game, a couple blown calls, a couple other very questionable missed calls as well. But essentially, the Packers were up, I don't know, was it a point? I mean, it was within 3 points. But they had the ball on a 3rd down in field goal range. It would have been like a 40 to 45 yard field goal. And the Lions, if the Lions could have gotten a stop, the Lions would have gotten the ball with, at worst, a chance to win the game with a touchdown with about a minute left. But a hands to the face call on a defender gives the Packers a free first down, and they can just kneel the game out when he doesn't even have the hands anywhere near the face. And so it was a 1-point game at that point in time, right? So either the Lions get a chance, a field goal wins the game, or a touchdown wins the game. Either way, they still got a shot at it. But instead, the refs kind of take that chance away. And again, twice on drives in the 4th quarter, the Lions get shut down due to that. And it just reignites all of our refereeing controversies because the NFL is no stranger at all to having this go on.
It's so painful to watch for me as a Lions fan. Obviously, there's two huge drives. The first one with 9 minutes left would have been a 3rd down stop.
Yeah, they both would have been 3rd down stops. We would have got the ball back.
Two hypothetical 3rd down stops. The first one we would have just retained the lead with less than 9. We would have had a 2-possession game with the ball less than 9 minutes in the 4th quarter.
Sounds good to me.
That would have been nice. And then that last drive, it could have been like a 40-something yard field goal where we get the ball back and a chance to go back and win, and turned into a chip shot as time expired because of it. I don't hate, I don't know. I know that the NFL has had its fair share of ref controversies, I've never been a fan of like complaining about the officials after the game, and like in this case, it's like an obvious missed call and it sucks for the Saints in that big Super Bowl game. That was an obvious missed call and it sucks for them.
Yep.
In general, I don't think there's the best fix to this. You don't want to make the game so slow that
right. So that's kind of the question. Is like, what is the way to fix it? Because yes, the NFL's had plenty of refereeing mistakes, and I'm like you. I know how hard being a ref is, and I say these guys got a tough job. They do pretty well. They mess up in crucial situations, and all of a sudden the game is rigged. That being said, this year has felt a lot worse to me than normal, and in watching the Lions game, I understand why people think that the NFL could be rigged, because on the surface, it looks like there was something fishy going on, and I'm sure there wasn't, but it's really bad. We've gotten to a situation where it feels like every week we have these really controversial decisions, right? And now we can challenge offensive pass interference, which I don't technically think it slows the game down, because it's still just a challenge, although maybe teams use their challenges more often now. But it's just adding more and more things we can replay. But the standard for reversing those calls has been so high that there's been a lot of calls that everyone just agrees is like, yeah, that's pass interference, but they won't call it for whatever reason. So that's even adding more controversy. We don't want to reach a situation where you can just review everything. But at the same point in time, the quality of refereeing in any sport is really important. And it feels like the NFL, and again, social media, now we can complain about it, but it really does feel like the quality over the last few years has really gone down. And it is a real problem.
I hear you. It sucks to see this. I think maybe this year, maybe if you're seeing it a little bit more, it might have something to do with them trying to be able to challenge penalties, and that might impact the way refs think about throwing flags a little bit, knowing that there's a little bit of a safety net.
So the problem for me is with refereeing, you have to be specific about the kind of things that you can throw the flag on. So I understand why maybe offensive holding is something that can't be challenged, because they're like, you can find holding on every play. Surely with hands to the face, you can throw a challenge flag and say, well, does he touch the face? No.
I agree. They're experimenting with this a little bit.
If you want to review some kinds of plays, if they're all going to count the same and all going to be challenges and you still get 2 challenges a game, then within reason, I think we can expand the scope of it. And in general, I don't like the idea of adding more replay, because no one wants the games to be longer. But if it's not going to change anything, surely there are some calls that you can just say, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just sitting there watching the game being like, why can't we challenge this? They're letting us challenge penalties now. What's so special about this clear-cut type of circumstance? Even being on this side of it, though, in general, I think the best philosophy, as a fan, is to just suck it up and move on. And accept that human error is part of the game.
Yeah.
Because there's not an easy fix other than that. I'd like to see the NFL work. I don't know what they could do. I agree about expanding. Now that they're challenging penalties, you might as well expand it to all clear-cut, obvious penalties, not just pass interference, or things that could be clear-cut and obvious.
Yeah, my thing is just, again, with penalties that we can agree that you can basically reach a yes or no answer on. There's no reason to have some of them, but not all of them. I didn't like the idea of challenging pass interference. I still don't. But I think if you're going to allow that, allow other stuff, right?
Yeah. And as far as quality of referees and all that, it's so hard. I'm sure that they trained them a lot, and I don't think it's rigged either, but I get how that perception gets forwarded out sometimes. I don't know what they could do. I think it's fine, and we just hope that this stuff doesn't keep going on, because I don't know what else they could do.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure either, but again, it's just one of these storylines to follow, and I'm sure they're going to change things for next year. They'll probably change the guidelines for reversing and pass interference, and maybe they'll look at expanding it in other ways. Remains to be seen, but we are in week 7 now. Heading into games on Sunday, we got, again, doing the quick math, 12 games on Sunday, 1 game on Monday. Patriots and Jets, the Monday nighter. Obviously I think the Patriots are still heavy favorites, but maybe not quite as much of a foregone conclusion as we thought now that the Jets have shown life. But mostly looking at the Sunday games, just trying to see anything that stands out to me. I think your Lions are in a really make or break for their season game against the Vikings, because if they drop that one, then yes, the Lions still look like a good team, but they would just be so far behind the rest of their division. So.
Right. No, not going to lie. It's a huge game for us. There's a few really good division games this week. The Lions is one of them. And I think it's at the point now, like, we should have beat Green Bay, and Kansas City needed a game-winning drive against us, which you can get kind of excited about. But like at some point you need to actually win. Yeah. Like, it's good. I'm glad we're competing with these top quality teams, but if we want to be considered like a real threat or a real good team, we're gonna have to win some of these games. And based on the way the standings look right now, with us 2-2, Green Bay 5-1, it better start here against Minnesota. So big game.
And Minnesota's a good team. I think we got caught up on this Kirk Cousins is bad campaign, because it's so easy to do when you look at his results against meaningful opponents. But they also just torched the Eagles last week, so they look really good.
Let me cut you off real quick. Breaking news just now as we're recording this podcast. Patrick Mahomes' MRI turned out to be a best case scenario.
Okay,
QB expected to miss 3 weeks, and then he'll be back.
Okay, so well that's good.
Adam Schefter.
I got very scared when we
on that. Mahomes out for the year. No.
Yeah, okay, so that's good.
It's good news for Patrick Mahomes. Excellent news for the Chiefs. I bet they're celebrating a little bit right now.
This is exciting. Can we break news more often on the podcast?
You heard it here first on.
My fantasy team feels good. Then again, I also have the Patriots defense.
So yeah, great news for the Chiefs. Still he's expected to be back 1 week before their bye. Well, as they approach that, we'll see if they want to just hold him through the bye.
Yeah, but maybe he'll play next week. Saquon Barkley was supposed to be out for 8 weeks, and the next week he's like, "I'm here if you need me."
Maybe he'll channel his inner Saquon. Yeah, he'll realize they need him to make the Super Bowl.
Hypothetical, they're 5-2. If they lose to the Vikings and the Packers, and they're 5-4, do you think they just throw him out there?
It's hard to say.
It's the Titans, so it's like you want to think you can beat the Titans.
I think if Mahomes is on the sideline saying, put me in, I feel fine, then maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Depends on the doctor's evaluations, too. It would be really tempting, though.
It would be really tempting.
It would be really, really tempting.
Do you think the Lions can beat the Vikings?
I do. I mean, we looked good against the Packers and we looked good against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
We did. We didn't win the games, but we could have. If we play bad against the Vikings, it's a red flag. And if we, let's say the Vikings blow us out, I think it would have that same feeling of, what we've had for the past decade. And it's like, oh, God, we were almost good, but it turns out we were the same first-round playoff exit peaking team that we've had the whole time.
Yeah, I think that one's a real toss-up.
And might even miss the playoffs because the division's so stacked.
Yeah. But beyond that one, we've got.
But we could.
Texans and Colts playing for the AFC South. That, just as a brief scroll, might be the best game of the week. Although we also have Eagles Cowboys, which would give it a run for its money. We have Saints Bears, Ravens Seahawks. We've got quite a few games now looking at that. Pretty competitive. 49ers Redskins, that one won't be.
Right.
But a lot of good games.
Yeah, Eagles Cowboys being maybe one of the better 3-3 versus 3-3 games.
Tough to find a better 3-3.
You could ever see ever.
Yeah.
That one is going to be really good. Awesome rivalry, obviously, and playing for the top of the division, and both teams that were not too long ago considered borderline Super Bowl contenders.
And a Sunday nighter, so we don't have to listen to Troy Aikman.
That's always good. Yeah. And then, I'm excited for Texans Colts as well, because big test for both teams, really. We were talking about the Texans maybe being the second best team in the AFC earlier, and then the Colts, who have a good record right now, trying to prove themselves a little bit more post Andrew Luck with Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like should be a fun set of games. A couple good ones early, a couple good ones late. Sunday night good. Should be a fun day of football. That's just about all I've got for the podcast. I know that you have a special announcement to make about your own podcast. Give us the information.
Yeah, so I've just upstarted my new NBA podcast. Super excited about it. It's called Full Court Press, although apparently there's a lot of podcasts called Full Court Press, so the name might be under review. Bear with me there. But my Instagram is @RealMichaelLyon. You can check me out there, and there's a link to our first episode, and hopefully we'll be recording a lot more, and maybe I'll get Connor to come on one of them.
Never. No. For all the times that you've come on mine, I'll be sure to tune in. So any hardcore Connor fans out there, I would be excited for my appearances on Full Court Press or whatever we just had to call it. But no, it's good. It's good. It's fun, and I'm sure we'll be on it. And a lot of big stuff in the NBA. The NBA's always got stuff to talk about, so it seems like a good transition. Sport. Yeah, you can talk about the NBA 12 months.
Some people like the off season better than the season,
which makes it so great. Honestly, I think this year is going to change that, just because this year's. It's amazing.
This off season was as crazy of an off season,
right? And so now we have a position where like 10 teams think they're going to win the title, which is so much more than the 2 it usually is.
It was awesome. Great parody of the NBA.
So it'll be so much fun, and the NFL looks like it'll be a bunch of fun as well. So, as always, thank you for tuning in to the Connor Grohl Sports Podcast with Michael Lyon, who is starting his own podcast. And we'll be back next week, as always. Maybe we'll have Michael back on. I don't know. I feel like maybe I need to get myself on his podcast before I have him back on. We'll figure it out. But as always, thanks for listening. Have a fun Week 7 of football. Until next week, see ya.